That night, as she rested, she heard him on the phone, his voice low but sharp. "She can't give me a son. I need a son." The words sliced through her, deeper than any wound childbirth had left.
Sandra and Peter had always been a team. They met in London as young immigrants, sharing the struggles of trying to make ends meet in a foreign land. Sandra worked tirelessly as a nurse, while Peter juggled multiple jobs before starting a small business. They dreamed of one day retiring in Nigeria, where they would live comfortably in the home they had built together. After years of saving, their dream became a reality. They purchased land in Banana Island, Lagos, one of the most exclusive areas in Nigeria. Every detail of the house was carefully planned. Sandra chose the colors, Peter oversaw construction, and together they made it into a symbol of their love and hard work. Sitting in their London apartment, Peter often reassured Sandra, "One day, we'll return home and live like royalty." She believed him. She trusted him completely, but trust, as she would later learn, can be broken in the worst ways. The birth of their first child, Amanda, was a moment of pure joy. Peter was overjoyed, holding his daughter close and promising to give her the world. When their second daughter, Michelle, was born 2 years later, Sandra noticed a shift in Peter's attitude. Though he still loved his family, he seemed less enthusiastic. When Sandra gave birth to their third daughter, his family's complaints became louder. "A man needs a son to carry on his name," they told him. Sandra tried to ignore the whispers. "Daughters are just as precious," she told Peter. He smiled but said nothing. When Sandra became pregnant again, it was her most difficult pregnancy yet. The doctor warned that another C-section could be fatal. When their fourth daughter, Isabel, was born, Sandra barely survived the delivery. The doctor sternly warned, "You cannot have another child. Your body won't survive it." Sandra felt relieved. Their family was complete. But Peter felt differently. Peter's behavior changed drastically. He began staying out late, making frequent business trips to Nigeria, and avoiding conversations about their future. Sandra, exhausted from raising 4 children and managing her demanding job, dismissed it as work stress. One night, she overheard him speaking in hushed tones on the phone. "I need a son. I can't keep waiting." Her heart pounded. Who was he talking to? When she confronted him, he brushed her off. "You're imagining things, Sandra." But deep inside, she knew something was wrong. She just didn't know how bad it was. Peter's trips to Nigeria became more frequent. He claimed they were for business, but Sandra's instincts told her otherwise. Then one evening, she received a call from her childhood friend, Chinyere, who lived in Lagos. "Sandra, I don't know how to tell you this, but Peter has a new wife here. She's pregnant." Sandra felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She dropped the phone, her hand shaking. This couldn't be real. The man she built a life with, the father of her daughter, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. Determined to fight back, Sandra sought legal advice. She wanted to claim her share of the home they had built together. But when the lawyer reviewed the documents, he gave her devastating news. "The house is entirely in Peter's name," the lawyer explained. "You never signed any ownership papers, and since your marriage was only traditional, you have no legal rights under UK or Nigerian law." Sandra was speechless. She had trusted Peter completely. Now she had nothing. Sandra took Peter to court, hoping to prove that she contributed to their wealth. She presented evidence of joint saving, receipts, and her sacrifices. But the judge's ruling was swift. "There is no legal proof tying you to the property," he declared. The documents list Peter as the sole owner. Sandra's heart broke. She had lost everything. Peter smirked at her as he walked out of the courtroom. "It's over, Sandra. Accept it." But Sandra wasn't done fighting, not for a house, but for herself and her daughters. Sandra sat in her small London apartment, staring at the court papers that confirmed her worst fears. She had lost the house, the dream she and Peter built together. Everything she worked for was gone. Her daughters played quietly in the next room, unaware of the storm that had uprooted their mother's life. A deep sadness filled Sandra's heart, but as she watched her children, she knew one thing: she still had them, and she would never let them suffer because of Peter's betrayal. Chinyere, a childhood friend in Lagos, called again. "Sandra, you need to come back to Nigeria," she urged. "You can't just let Peter win like this." But Sandra shook her head. "I have nothing there. No house, no legal claim, nothing." "Then rebuild," Chinyere said firmly. "You have something more valuable than property: your strength." For the first time in weeks, Sandra felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she couldn't get the house back, but she could build something new. Sandra threw herself into work, determined to provide a good life for her daughters. She took on extra shifts at the hospital, saved every penny, and planned for the future. One evening, after putting the children to bed, she looked at herself in the mirror. She was exhausted, but she wasn't broken. She made a decision. "I will not let this destroy me," she whispered. Instead of focusing on what she lost, she started thinking about what she could gain. She reached out to old friends, explored business ideas, and began planning her next move. Peter may have taken the house, but it could never take her will to succeed. Back in Nigeria, Peter was basking in his new life. His new wife, Lovett, was pregnant, and he felt triumphant. He finally had a chance to have the son he always wanted. But things were not as perfect as they seemed. Lovett was nothing like Sandra. She was younger, beautiful, but also demanding. "Peter, I need more money," she complained one evening. "This house is big, but it needs better furniture, and I want a new car." Peter sighed. He had spent a lot on the wedding, the house, and Lovett's lifestyle. His savings were running low, but his ego wouldn't let him admit it. "It will come," he reassured her. But deep down, he was beginning to feel the pressure. Sandra took a bold step. She started a side business, selling African fabrics and accessories online. It was a small idea, but it grew quickly. Word spread among the African community in London, and others started coming in. Soon, she was making more money than she ever had. As a nurse, one evening she sat with her daughters, showing them how to package orders. "This is our future," she told them. "No one will ever take anything from us again." For the first time in a long while, Sandra felt something new: hope. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, Peter's problems were piling up. His business was struggling, and Lovette's spending habits were becoming unbearable. One day, he received a call from the bank. "Sir, your account is overdrawn. We need you to make a deposit immediately." Peter panicked. He had always been the provider, the man in control, but now for the first time, he was sinking. And to make matters worse, Lovette's pregnancy wasn't going smoothly. Months later, Lovett finally gave birth to a son. Peter was ecstatic. He had finally gotten what he wanted, but the joy was short-lived. Lovett became even more demanding, insisting that Peter register more properties in her name. "You gave Sandra everything for years. Now it's my turn," she said. Peter's victory was starting to feel like a curse. One evening, Sandra received an unexpected phone call. It was from one of Peter's relatives in Nigeria. "Sandra, I know you've moved on, but you need to hear this," the voice said. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. "It's Peter. He's in trouble. His business is collapsing, and Lovett is threatening to leave him." Sandra felt nothing, no joy, no anger, just a quiet realization. Peter had destroyed his own life, and for the first time in years, she finally felt free. Sandra looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was no longer broken. She had built something out of nothing, a thriving business that was growing by the day. One afternoon, she received an invitation to a Nigerian women in business conference in Lagos. It was the perfect opportunity to expand her brand. She hesitated at first. Nigeria held painful memories, but then she thought of her daughters. She smiled. It was time to face her past and claim her future. Stepping off the plane in Lagos, Sandra felt a mix of emotions. The last time she was here, she was fighting a losing battle against Peter. Now she was here on her own terms. She met up with her friend Chinyere, who took her around town. As they drove past Banana Island, Sandra caught a glimpse of the house she once called hers. But she felt no pain. That house was no longer her prison. She had built something even greater, her independence. Meanwhile, Peter's world was falling apart. His business had collapsed due to mismanagement, and his debts were piling up. To make matters worse, Lovett had changed. She was no longer the sweet, doting woman he married. Now, she was angry and frustrated. One evening, she dropped a bombshell. "I'm leaving," she said. "I didn't sign up for poverty." Peter was stunned. "But we have a son." Lovett laughed coldly. "A son won't pay the bills." With that, she packed her things and left. Alone and drowning in debt, Peter was forced to sell the very house he had betrayed Sandra for. As he signed the sale papers, he felt a hollow emptiness. The house was supposed to be his legacy, proof of his success. Now, it was just another loss in his long list of failures. For the first time, he realized the weight of his mistakes. At the business conference, Sandra stood before a crowd of powerful women, sharing her story. "I lost everything I worked for," she said, "but I realized that true wealth is not in property or titles, it's in strength, in resilience, in knowing your worth." The audience erupted in applause. Sandra had finally won, not in court, but in life. As Sandra was leaving the conference, she bumped into someone unexpected, Peter. He looked nothing like the man she once knew. He was thinner, tired, and broken. "Sandra," he said, his voice filled with regret. She looked at him, not with anger but with indifference. "What do you want, Peter?" "I lost everything," he admitted. "Lovett left me. The house is gone. I made a mistake, Sandra." She nodded. "Yes, you did." Peter begged for forgiveness. "I was blinded by my obsession for our son. I didn't see what I already had." Sandra sighed. "Regret won't change the past, Peter. I fought for you. I gave you everything, but you threw it away." He looked down, ashamed. "I don't expect you to take me back. I just wanted you to know I was wrong." Sandra took a deep breath. "I know, and I hope you learn from it." With that, she walked away, leaving Peter standing alone in the life he had destroyed. As Sandra continued building her business, she met someone new, David, a successful businessman who admired her strength and intelligence. Unlike Peter, he valued her for who she was, not for what she could give him. For the first time in years, Sandra allowed herself to feel something she thought was gone: love. Sandra's daughters were thriving. Amanda, the eldest, had just been accepted into a top university. "You're amazing, Mom," Amanda told her one night. "Everything you went through, you still gave us a good life." Sandra smiled. "Because you girls are my real legacy." Peter reached out to Sandra one last time. "Please, let me be in my daughters' lives." Sandra considered it. He had failed as a husband, but did he deserve a chance as a father? "I'll think about it," she said, "but only if you prove you've changed." Peter knew this was his last chance. Sandra eventually let Peter see his daughters, but on her terms. "You lost me forever," she told him, "but for their sake I will allow you to be a father." Just don't fail them the way you failed me." Peter nodded, tears in his eyes. "Thank you." Years later, Sandra stood in her own house, a home she built on her own. As she watched her daughter grow into strong, successful women, she realized she had won in ways Peter never could, because true wealth wasn't in property or even in having a son. It was in love, in family, and in knowing your worth. And Sandra, she was richer than she had ever been. This is the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it.